Hello and a warm welcome to the show. I'm Stalia Strzemska. Each year, on the anniversary of the Warsaw Rising, we pause to reflect on those important days of resistance. The Warsaw Rising Museum plays a vital role in preserving the memory of that chapter in history. How does the museum present the choices and actions of people at that time? To discuss, I'm joined by Aleksandra Duda from the Warsaw Rising Museum. Hello and welcome, delighted to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start with the museum itself. What role does it play in building the narrative around the Warsaw Rising?
We need to underline that the Warsaw Rising Museum tells the story of ordinary people who did extraordinary things in the times of utmost turmoil of history. Many people don't know that the Rising happened. Most of the people in the West only are aware of the Warsaw Uprising that took place in 1943. So we need to differentiate that.
Because there's some confusion, right, also around the name. So.
Exactly. So we stress that there were two uprisings in the city of Warsaw during World War II. We try to convey the message that Polish people showed perseverance, were very courageous, and had this dream of living normal lives, but their dreams were crushed by the brutality of war and the terror imposed by the German occupant.
For those of our viewers who are not too familiar with Polish history, could you perhaps briefly describe what led to the Warsaw Rising in 1944?
So we need to start with 1939, when Poland was attacked on September the 1st by Germans, and 2 weeks later by the Soviet Union. Polish territory was occupied by our neighbours, Germans and Soviets respectively, for very long 5 years. And in July 1944, the Soviet Union, that had the biggest army at that time, the Red Army, was approaching the gates of Warsaw. Germans were in retreat, and that was the moment when we thought, that's the moment to take up the arms and expel Germans from our beloved city. Unfortunately, the Russians stopped at the gates of Warsaw and admired the spectacle of Warsaw in flames. We struggled during the Warsaw Rising for 63 days, that is 2 months alone, far from the Western Front. The Allies tried to do their best. They sent some aircraft to drop supplies, but that was not enough. And the Rising ended on October the 2nd, 1944. The city was annihilated, the population was expelled from their homes, and the city of ruins was here when the Red Army finally decided to enter the city on the 17th of January 1945.
How are you trying to describe those events at the museum? What artifacts are you showing? What is building the narrative?
So the museum has been operating since 2004. So we've been here in Warsaw for 21 years, and we are really happy that about 600,000 people visit our museum every year. People are invited to delve into the story of the Warsaw Rising through the sounds, through the different exhibits that were donated by the families of the Warsaw Rising participants. So we try to create this atmosphere of World War II, of our struggle to fight for freedom, of suffering. And we need to remember that people have different sensibility. It's easy to talk about war, about suffering to people who are in their 40s, 50s, 60s, who are even older. It's very difficult to talk about war to young tourists, young visitors who don't have this experience and very often have never heard about the tragedy of World War II.
But I was going to ask, how are you attracting these younger audiences?
These days we try to organize different events. We try to talk about history, engaging them in different workshops about drawing, about sewing, the way our great-grandfathers did during the times of World War II. We try to engage them in different urban games. We try to tell them that these were the people who did not differ from us. They had the very same dreams, but their dreams were never fulfilled.
The museum has been around for 21 years, and I wanted to ask you, how has it changed over the years?
So we have the permanent exhibition for 21 years, and it attracts attention, and we are very proud that one of the greatest attractions of our museum is one-to-one replica of American Liberator. So it's huge. It tells the story of those brave, courageous airmen who came from different countries and decided to bring aid to Warsaw in 1944. Every year we try to open temporary exhibitions. This year we opened the exhibition that is dedicated to the silent, unseen and the military unit GROM. So those of you who have not been to the museum, please come. You are welcome.
Definitely worth going. But some of the participants of the Rising are still luckily with us. So what feedback have you gotten from them?
It's always amazing to see them coming to our museum, especially when we have those meetings between the veterans and the young visitors, people who have very little knowledge about suffering, about death. And they meet those people who've seen it all, who experience brutality of war, who lost so many of their loved ones. And they see the sparkle in their eyes, they see this power, this vitality, even though these veterans are very often their late 90s, yes, so they are very, very old, but they have this force of life, and they try to pass on this message that there's so much at stake in our lives, and we should follow some values that will guarantee a place in eternity.
And would you mind sharing with us perhaps one of the most moving stories that you've encountered?
Well, there are many stories. I remember once I was showing a museum to the former president of Estonia, and the whole delegation was very moved when we watched the City of Ruins film, which shows the city of Warsaw that was totally turned into rubble due to World War II. And they realized that Warsaw in 1939 had 1,300,000 inhabitants, the exact number of the inhabitants of Estonia today. And I remember the tears in the eyes, and it was very, very moving. It shows us that this threat of war is always present, and we share very same feelings.
You've mentioned 1,300,000 inhabitants, decimated to?
60% of these people, unfortunately, were crushed by the war, so more than 700,000 inhabitants of Warsaw did not survive. We need to remember that after the Rising, 650,000 people had to leave their homes and were deported into the unknown. Many were deported straight to Auschwitz concentration camp. So these losses are still felt today, and I believe Warsaw is very special because it shows that human hatred may destroy anything that's material, but cannot destroy what lies in our hearts.
Was it worth it?
These questions are always asked, especially when we have those commemorations of the Warsaw Rising every year, and I keep repeating that. Many people say that this beautiful generation of people who were born in 1920s was lost, and there was no one to build New Poland after the end of World War II. We need to remember that Poland after World War II was a communist state, and those who survived were persecuted or were hanged or were executed by the communist authorities after the war. There's this staggering number of 50,000 Poles who were killed in between 1944 and 1956. So when we compare it to the losses of the Warsaw Rising insurgents, about 20,000 who got killed during the Rising, those who fought actively in the streets of Warsaw. You have the scale, yes.
Polish history is extremely difficult and extremely painful, right? Of course.
So it's very important to know all the details before we say whether it was right or wrong.
How do curators at the museum differentiate between different objects, different narratives? What are some of the criteria that they use? I mean, behind these artifacts, we have oftentimes personal stories.
It's very difficult because, as I said, we have this permanent exhibition that's been here for 21 years. That's why very often we try to open temporary exhibitions where we try to show the donations and tell the story of the objects that were given to our museum by the families, by the insurgents. And it's very moving when we go to our archives and we analyze those different items that were donated by the families. Many Warsawians, many insurgents who are still alive have not donated the things that relate to the time of World War II because they are so closely tied to these objects. Very often people were left with only one small object after these difficult days of fighting and trying to survive. There is one very emotional item exposed at the Warsaw Rising Museum. It's a loaf of bread that was preserved by one of the soldiers who was leaving Warsaw in October 1944. So imagine so many years and this loaf of bread is still here, this piece of bread, showing the character of those people, yes, that they were just like us, but sometimes they wanted to preserve something for the posterity to show how difficult it was then.
And what about oral histories? Have you thought about perhaps recording some of these survivors?
We have very rich oral archive, and it's amazing, yes, that we managed to record so many participants of this event, not only insurgents but also people who were civilians at the time of the Warsaw Rising, also the airmen who were from South Africa, from Great Britain, who volunteered, who took part in the Warsaw airlift. And for me particularly, the story of the Warsaw Rising airlift is very close to my heart, because even today we have a chance to link families who lost contact, and for example we meet the families of the airmen who survived, who come to our country, who visit the graves of the friends of their fathers, for example, and it's so moving, yes, to see the emotions that were kept so dear in the hearts of those people for so many years.
And when these people will no longer be with us, how do you think the role of the museum will change? What are your plans for the future?
So a few years ago, our museum had this idea to engage the scouting organizations to participate more in the commemorations. So we have those jamborees almost every year. And it's beautiful to see so many scouts coming to our museum, meet with veterans, meet with the families of those who participated in the Rising. Also, a few years ago, we initiated a project that is known the Roots of Memory. So we record the families of the Warsaw Rising participants. And these are also very beautiful stories. A few months ago, there was an interview with daughters of one of the insurgents, Mr. Nowak, codename Panienka. And these ladies, there were 5 sisters, so this insurgent had 5 daughters. He lived in Belgium after World War II. They described in detail the love of their father. So it's an amazing story of people who suffered so much during World War II, who lost so many of their loved ones, but they managed to overcome their fears and pass on the passion for life to the next generations.
And the thing that we've learned as humanity from what happened?
There are many lessons, but so many mistakes are being repeated on and on. So,
Aleksandra Duda, thank you so much for being with us and for doing such important work.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching Pulse of Culture. Please stay tuned for more here on TVP World.